Hey, what's going on YouTube? Alabama Reloader here. So, kind of part two of our little 280 Remington project that we've got going on. I'm going to talk about the resizing process. So, I know I mentioned in the initial video, I was going to make sure we got a good full-length resize on this. We weren't necessarily worried about the whole, only bump at 2/1000ths thing or 1/1000th and a half or whatever you see a lot of some of the YouTube content kind of geared around that process. Some of the, hey, bump at 1/1000th and then you're good to go, and make sure your neck tension is this, that, and the other. We're not necessarily going to be diving off into that. Whatever neck tension is set from our full-length resizing die, that's just what it is. And then also we followed these instructions in the Lee little die manual here, or whatever, the instruction manual that comes with the die. We followed these instructions exactly, and so this is kind of what our full-length resize die setup looks like. There's not a lot of thread, not a lot of adjustment left to tighten this thing down, and the reason why is because you actually have a little more space on these Redding T7 presses. You have to screw the die in a lot further than you would on something else like a Lee, breech lock single stage press or whatever. You have to cover more ground with the die to get, basically to set it up the way it says in the instructions. So that's what I did. I raised the ram to the top of the stroke and screwed the die down until it touched, and then lowered the ram and went an additional, I think it was 1/3 of a turn, and that's where we have just a slight cam over with that setup. So that's what we're running. And then with that process, is kind of funny, but with that die setup, believe it or not, I am, oh, my handle came loose here. Believe it or not, I am right at 2/1000ths. Is how far we're our full length resize. That's what we're pushing the shoulder back. 2 to 2.5 thousandths is everything that I'm getting on my measurements that I took. I resized 9 of these guys and then decided to turn the camera on and kind of mention that, just because I had brought it up in the previous video, that we weren't necessarily focused on that, and we're not. I just wanted to make sure we get a good resize process going on this brass. And so that's kind of where we're at. But the resizing is moving along. Just normal stuff. I did have to tighten this down. It does come, kind of loose. It's finger tight from the factory, but whenever you run a piece of brass up in it and try to come back down over the expander ball portion, it's a tapered expander ball design. It's a single piece design on the Lee. It's not an actual expander ball like you see on some of the other dies. It's just a tapered portion of steel. So when you try to come back down over that, if this isn't tight enough, that whole rod assembly will drop down into your brass, which is what happened to me. I thought I had tightened this up good enough with my wrenches and stuff before I got started, but I did not. So that is something that you just need to be aware of, if you're new to this Lee full-length resizing die. Just make sure you tighten that down before you get started, because it can kind of be a pain in the butt to get everything lined back up, get the rod back up into the die, tighten everything down, and then go from there. So just make sure you do that beforehand. But knock on wood, the Hornady one shot has been working pretty well so far. I've had issues with it when I've used it in retting dies. That's really where I've stuck a few cases here lately in retting and Hornady dies with using this particular can of One Shot. I had the previous can of One Shot that I'd used it for a long time. I mean, a couple of years probably. And then finally ran out of it, and I had maybe 1 or 2 stuck cases that entire time. And then I switched over to this can, picked up a larger can of it because it worked so well. And then, I mean, just right off the bat, I think I stuck 3 or 4 cases using that stuff. And so I kind of switched over to Redding Imperial sizing die wax for a lot of my projects here lately, and haven't had any issues with that. But with this, I was going to give it another shot, no pun intended, since its name is One Shot. But I was going to give it another go, see if it would do just fine, and so far it is. I mean, I'm on case number 39. Here's number 40. And so pretty much I just did what I normally do. I sprayed this block in this orientation. You hold it at like a 45-degree angle, spray it, and then I rotated the block around and then did the same thing, 45-degree angle, sprayed it again, and then you let it sit for like a minute or so, and then you start sizing. So that's what I did, and seems to be working okay. But that is where we're at. That is the full-length resizing process. It's just nice that it happened to work out to where, according to our instructions, we set it up exactly how the instructions would have us set it up, and you know, we're not overly sizing our brass. So that is kind of nice. You know, that is something that if you're gonna, and that would be the thing, like if we were talking about, hey, we want to size for, you know, maybe we're a competitive shooter, right? And we're gonna go shoot a couple hundred rounds in a weekend or whatever, and then we're going to come back and we're going to go through our process. Well, yeah, I mean, you definitely, if you're going to have repeated firings on your brass and you're going to come back and reload that same batch over and over again, then yeah, definitely set your sizing die up to where you can get a good resize on it, but not oversize your brass. You don't want to wear it out faster than you know, just necessarily have to, because again, components are still relatively hard to come by, especially when it comes to brass. It's kind of coming back around. You see it a little, you see some brass pop up here and there, but it's still on the expensive side. So you don't necessarily want to just burn through your brass and oversize it and, you know, use up its useful life quicker than you necessarily have to. So, but in this case, this is strictly hunting ammunition. I'll probably work through this batch of 50. I'm hoping I can identify a good load or a couple of good loads by the time I'm done with these 50 pieces. Then I will come back, do the exact same resize process, you know, trim, chamfer, deburr, whatever, do my normal brass prep, and then hopefully load up some hunting rounds, and then hand them over to my dad, and he'll have them for the next several years to hunt with. And then, you know, when he runs out, then we'll load up more. But that's going to be kind of the process. So it's not, that's why I'm not overly concerned about, you know, if I go according to the instructions, I'm going to be worried about oversizing my brass. I'm not necessarily, or overworking my brass. I'm not necessarily worried about that because of the application that this is going to be used in. So it's all about matching the process to the application, right? Because you can really dive off into this stuff and really get down into the weeds and really bog down about, you know, so-and-so said this on this video, well, then this other person contradicted them, and now I don't know what to do and who to listen to. Or I mean, at the end of the day, you really have to start with the end in mind, right? You have to really focus on, what am I actually trying to achieve? You know, if I'm sitting here watching PRS guys or bench rest guys, you know, talk about the way they do everything, and I have to do everything the exact same way they do everything, but yet I'm just going out to shoot hogs or to shoot whitetail deer at 150 yards. Well, you know, you could probably get away with doing not doing some of those things and still achieve really, really good results. And it's going to fit your need perfectly. You know, if you go and shoot 1.5-inch groups at 100 yards and you go kill, you know, 5 whitetail this year and you make good shots on all 5, and then what does it matter, right? So that's kind of where I stand on all of that. So, but that's it. Next video should be a continuation of what I'll probably do is run through. I don't think I'm going to run through the trim, chamfer, and deburr. That's pretty straightforward stuff. I mean, you guys, you've seen me do this multiple times. I'm going to take this one out. I'll put the 280 Remington Lee case length gauge in there. And then I'll just run all the cases through there. I'll clean the primer pockets. I'll trim. I'll put every single one on there, so if they need to trim, they'll trim whatever's over. And then I'll chamfer, deburr, run a brush through the neck, and we'll go. Next up, we'll just be priming, dumping powder, and bullet seeding. So that's it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll catch y'all next time. Y'all have a good one.